The most important title I will ever hold is Jordan's mom. Many of you know my story. You know that I lost my son in a racially motivated shooting to a man who was unable to see the value of my son in the world. And while I was raising Jordan, I was working as a flight attendant for Delta Airlines, and I would schedule every single one of my trips basically around the raising of my son. No matter how many long hours I worked during the day, I would leave in the morning and I would come home back in the evening just so that I could spend time raising my son. Then almost 8 years ago, my life really changed forever. Jordan and his friends were simply going shopping at the mall. This was Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, and the boys had simply stopped at a convenience store gas station to get some chewing gum. And in the time that they stopped there, that 3.5 minutes that they parked there, a man named Michael Dunn pulled up next to the boys in his car, and he told them to turn their thug music down. And he told them that he couldn't hear himself think. He proceeded to shoot 10 rounds into the car. 3 of those shots that were fired were directed at my son Jordan, and he died instantly. That deep and racially motivated hate that day from a man who was empowered by his gun has changed my life just in an instant. I went from being just a regular suburban mom here in Marietta, Georgia, to a mother on a mission. And I began demanding more from our leaders. Why were they silent about all the gun violence in our country? Almost 100 Americans each and every single day continue to die by this extremist gun culture. And our leaders, they were doing absolutely nothing about it, especially for communities of color, which continue to this day to be disproportionately impacted by unnecessary gun violence. So I began a career in advocacy for safer gun laws with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America and Every Town for Gun Safety. Then after the Parkland tragedy, I remember hearing the promises that gun safety legislation would happen. And I remember hearing that from everyone, even President Trump, but nothing happened. So I decided that I had to do more for all the families like mine who have been torn apart by unnecessary gun violence, and for every single family in this country who attends movie theaters or parks or has kids who go to school. Someone had to stand up for our families. Someone had to stand up for our communities. We all deserve to live in safety. So I stood up for the families just like mine in Marietta, Georgia, and for families all throughout the country. I stood up and announced my run for Congress. And just a few months after starting my campaign in 2018, we were able to flip a seat that had not been held by a Democrat since 1979. And I am most assuredly the first minority to ever hold this seat in the history of Georgia. I beat the NRA-backed incumbent Karen Handel, who has been running over and over again in Georgia politics since the early 2000s. And she's running against me for a second time this election cycle, and she has proved that she is a friend of the National Republican Party, and she will do anything and say anything to take this seat back. But I do not plan on letting them take this seat back. That's my story, and that's why I stood up.
We gotta get in on the inside. There are not enough people on the inside that look like me.
You know, it's an honor to work every single day to protect the lives of every family in Georgia's 6th Congressional District, and I am so proud to have sponsored legislation, which is the first gun safety legislation to pass in the House in decades. Since taking office, I was able to pass legislation closing the Charleston loophole, and also legislation that enacts federal background checks for all gun sales. I was also able to introduce the Haven Act, a bill that helps our veterans that are facing financial hardship. And I saw the bill pass through the House, the Senate, and signed into law by the President. We have taken tremendous strides in the right direction, but we're only at the beginning of what we need to accomplish. I say there's still so much more to do, and then yet there is still much to undo. My hope is that I am able to hear every concern of my district and to work to come up with solutions that benefit the well-being of each and every person in my community and everyone that I represent.
And I promised that I would take all the love and the support and protection that I'd given to my child and use it to serve the American people. I promised I would always be a mother on a mission to save the lives of children from across America, children like my son.
Even though we're in very difficult times right now with COVID-19, our momentum has not stopped. The momentum of the nation has not stopped. Our volunteers have been doing incredible work in getting the word out through writing postcards or doing phone banking, social media, and that's what works. Meeting our constituents, meeting people where they are. That is what we've had to do, to be creative and to think outside the box and to do things with technology that we've not been faced with having to do before. I want to continue advocating for families in my district, whether that means being their voice when it comes to gun safety or health care or the economy. I have a duty to protect everyone that I represent, and that is how I plan to continue to work going forward in the future.
So while I look back at the life and legacy of John Lewis, and I remark how far we truly have come, I must also look toward a future without my son, and I see how far we still have to go.